Yeah, the crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home. Crawler wild's always bringing me home.
Hello, wild ones, and welcome to another episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. I'm so excited to have Emma Locke here today from Exotic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Brianna?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for giving me the time to come on. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So we very briefly, like two ships of the night, met at Animal Con, which was really awesome. That was a very fun event. That was my first year going, but met a lot of really nice people. It was nice to meet you in person. Did you have a great time this year too?
I really did, and thank you. It was so lovely to meet you. You were just such a great injection of positive energy in the
Thanks.
30 seconds that I got to actually see you. But it's a great event. I'm so excited that you got to experience it.
Yeah, hoping to come again next year. So absolutely. I first caught your account a couple of probably like a year or so ago. And I just love the idea of this trend in pet care going towards being like the best it could possibly be for animals. And I know you're a huge pet care health advocate. So I feel like this would be a great way to start off. Like, what have been your favorite trends that you've seen in like better healthcare, pet healthcare?
That is such a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before.
Oh, cool.
In terms of my favorite trend that I've seen going towards pet care, one of my favorite things that I've seen is that people have stopped asking, what size animal can I cram into this size enclosure? And have started instead saying, all right, this is the enclosure size that I have. What animals' needs can I fully cater to within this enclosure? Instead of this upgrading mentality, which we see so frequently, unfortunately, very much so in the reptile hobby, the reptile space. People will buy an enclosure and then an animal will outgrow that enclosure, and then they'll have to buy another larger enclosure for that particular reptile. But then, hey presto, they've got another small enclosure that's just become available, so they'll look for another baby animal to put in that, and then the cycle continues. And I'm seeing that cycle breaking instead, with people being more mindful about what they really want to keep in terms of species, and then purchasing an enclosure that can cater to that animal at every life stage, instead of that constant cycle of upgrading and buying new animals.
Yeah, it creates a bad end game for the animals too, because they either have to get adopted or they unfortunately get released into the wild. So it creates a lot of problems when you don't know the full scope of what you're getting into, or at least start off in the beginning. Um, yeah. What would you that leads me into my next question for you, is like, what would you say is like the best place for people to get that information and to be able to like start to know what the best care practices are for whatever pet they're interested in getting?
I mean, we have a whole world of technology at our fingertips, and there's a lot of really great information out there. But I actually always end up going back to Facebook. Facebook in particular is a place where it's very easy to search for a particular animal, and by species and by Latin name, and you can find groups of dedicated keepers who are wonderful at sharing their experiences and their expertise. And it's never too difficult to find a good mentor. Facebook can be a little brutal in terms of people being very, I suppose, honest to a fault when you're trying to get improvements on your care. People will call out care that is subpar, which can be a good thing, but I like to use a bit of tact there and understanding everyone is still a student in life and as an animal keeper. So making care accessible and friendly is definitely something that speaks to me. But if you're looking for really great up-to-date information from multiple sources, Facebook can be a great place for that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Because I feel like that's another big thing that could hinder somebody from trying to upgrade their enclosure, right? Maybe if they want a better one. So I feel like that's a really good point to try to maybe always come in like a nicer way, because people could get shamed into like, oh, well, see, I shared one time and then people said it was really bad, so I'm just going to keep it to myself from now on. And that actually hinders, again, the care of the animal. So we could, you know, if we are a little nicer, maybe we could get people to change their habitats for the better too.
I completely agree. I have two slogans that I really try to live by. One of them is don't hate, educate. I find that one is really useful. And the other one that I live by is if you cannot afford a vet, do not get the pet. Because I do believe every animal should have access to healthcare and also to a wonderful enclosure to live in, or an owner that is able to provide whatever that animal needs, whether they're a dog, a cat, a mouse, or a fish. So those really are the two sort of slogans I keep in my head as I do my work.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a horse that I've had for I don't know, like 15 years now. So that, yeah, his name's Raphael. He's getting older, unfortunately, but with that definitely comes more vet care. So, it's definitely worth to point out that, especially with things like horses, the bigger that you get is probably the more expensive and the more time consuming and things like that too.
Absolutely. And of course, that's a factor that a lot of people forget when they're thinking of a pet. With many animals, you can pick up some animals almost for free. And people love a good deal and a good bargain, but they forget to factor in setup cost, lighting costs, feeding costs, veterinary costs, medication costs. All of this can add up, not to mention time. Your time as well costs money. And a lot of people don't realize that you can very easily burn out when you're working a full-time job and you have children and you're managing being a good partner in a relationship or being a single parent and having to care for the animals as well. All of that can take a huge toll. So really looking at whether you can afford an animal is not just, do I have the necessary feeding and lighting and heating costs and veterinary costs, but also your emotional cost as well. There's a lot of compassion fatigue that can be had when working and keeping animals. And if things get a bit rough in one's own life, I know with my bipolar disorder, often that can be a struggle for me. When I go home, I don't want to look after anything else. So I keep most of my animals at my workplace. I am very fortunate to be able to do that. I can get them all happily fed, watered, handled during my lunch hour and my breaks and my weekends, because I live so close to my office. I mean, I'm like a 5-minute walk. But when I go home, I know what's healthiest for me now after many years of trial and error. I just want my dog there. And I don't want to have to deal with 100 geckos when I get home. So also really thinking about, can I emotionally and psychologically manage my dreams?
Yeah, that's a great point, and thank you so much for being open and sharing that. I actually also have bipolar disorder. I just recently found that out over the last couple years with going to therapy and everything like that, but I can absolutely relate in the sense of like having a pet and it taking like a mental toll, like especially with my horse. His name's Raphael, by the way. And as he's gotten older, I was pregnant and he had this big wound on his leg. And I remember going up there 8 months pregnant and changing the bandages on his leg. And it was taking a toll on me and it was hurting him. And he had already had surgery for another thing. So it was just a very rough time in my life. And like mentally, stressfully, he was like kicking because he was in pain, but like I could see through that. So then I eventually moved him, because he was in a backyard barn, to a boarding place, and they've been really great with helping me and giving me that extra support I need, especially having, now my son is 3, so having that space and time, and I think is such an important thing to highlight in pet care too, is the responsibility that it takes to have some other creature or being under your care, and to, if you really love that animal, make sure that you are doing the absolute best that you possibly can for them, is very important.
Absolutely. And thank you also for your vulnerability in sharing as well. I can't imagine trying to bandage a horse's leg whilst 8 months pregnant. That is absolutely insane. And kudos and hats off to you for being able
Thanks.
to do that.
Yes.
That's, mothers, of which I am not one. I'm just a mother to my dog, really, in my various,
Right.
but
Yeah.
are absolute superheroes. Parents are superheroes in general, and dealing with everything that a parent has to deal with, plus children, plus pets, it's a really, really big deal. And I think it's really important also to try and take away the guilt that comes with for animal keepers when life changes. A lot of people will look down on pet owners and pet keepers when they choose to rehome an animal, because we have this belief an animal is for life and not just for Christmas. That is true. I don't believe you should just get an animal for Christmas.
Of course. Right.
But I also believe that when life changes and you can no longer give an animal the care that they deserve, to responsibly rehome an animal is the most loving and best thing that one can do. So if anybody who
Yeah.
listens ever struggles with thinking, I feel like I'm failing and I have all this guilt around an animal and I'm ignoring the piled up hamster droppings, whatever it is, I'm just going to tell you, as someone who has been in the game for a very long time with animals, worked with all kinds of animals, you don't have to have that guilt. The most wonderful thing that anyone can do is say, you know what, I don't got this. This is the really brave thing to do, and to take the steps necessary to responsibly rehome and own an animal. And that will help to free up your time, your mental space, and give you just more emotional, mental bandwidth to heal yourself, heal your home, whatever it takes, and then you might be able in the future to keep a pet again. There's nothing wrong with that in my book.
Yeah, because we all go through different seasons of life, different stages, and I think it's very honorable and commendable when people are vulnerable and saying, I need help, please. Like, and you're actually showing that you really love that animal by looking out for the best for them. And I think it's, a really important thing on people to like recognize that and just like be kind to people, if especially if they're trying to do it in like the proper way and not just abandoning something somewhere or something like that. If they're really genuinely trying to look out for that animal, we should give people grace in that regards, because I'm sure they're going through something else.
Correct.
Yeah. Do you think that also, like, because there's so much information when it comes to pet care, that, like, should pet stores also be more responsible with, like, the information that they're giving people? Like, I know in a lot of your videos you highlight, like, hamster balls and wheels and those kind of things actually not really benefiting those animals, and studies showing not being great for those animals. Like, what would you maybe recommend for that?
So looking at an animal species and their natural behaviors that they would exhibit in the wild, is a great place to start. So you look at any
Okay.
species, let's just take a ferret, which happens to be one of my specialty animals. They're a burrower and
Mhm.
they enjoy stashing. So you don't necessarily have to go and buy anything really expensive to be a great animal and pet owner for a ferret. You can make, if they like borrowing, a dig box with macaroni, like literally fill a box full of macaroni and let them dig around in that. That is stimulating to their particular senses. Very much in the same vein of things, people with scent hounds will often do barn hunts with them on the weekend, because that helps to stimulate what that animal loves to do, which is to follow a scent, is what they're bred for. And then when you're actually shopping for items in a pet store, now, I feel like a bit of a traitor here, because I started off in pet stores. That was my first job when I was 10, was working in a
Wow.
pet store in Hong Kong. But one thing about pet stores, universally, at least the chain pet stores, you get the occasional mum and pop shop, which is different. But the chain pet stores, they are large businesses and corporations, and they are buying what they can that is cheap and what they can fit lots of on a shelf. So when you go into a pet store and you're looking for, say, an enclosure, you're only seeing what can fit on a shelf. 99.9% of what I see on a shelf is in terms of enclosures, completely inadequate for most animals, like a hamster or a rabbit or a bird cage that you'd see in a pet store. Most animals require much, much larger, but because it can't fit on a shelf, it wouldn't be profitable. They can't fit many of them. That the goal for a store is to fit many packets or items on a shelf, one behind the other. So once one is gone, you can move more forward and replace. The cycle continues. It's the same with the items you'll see for enrichment for pets as well. It's not just in enclosures. You also see that with mass-produced ferret toys, for example. Most of them are rat toys, and a ferret is not a rodent. They actually eat rodents, and their bodies work very differently. Most don't particularly enjoy gnawing the way that a rat or a mouse or a guinea pig would. So using a toy that's a wooden block is basically lost on a ferret. But if you can buy it cheaply and put it in a plastic shrink wrap and put it on a shelf and sell it at a premium and make people think that that's what their animal requires, then they are making the big bucks. So you can kind of see why it's important to really look at the species. How do they use their bodies? And then get innovative at home. You don't have to spend a ton of money.
Right. That's amazing because you could actually do something that's better for them, and it's, piquing your own creativity with trying to create new things too. And I think even just walking around Animal Con, because I have two dogs, but I don't have anything else right now. Even though I really liked some of the little hognose snakes when I was there, they were very cute. But just seeing how much, I think, from when I was younger, we had a leopard gecko and I also had an albino frog, but I don't think that they were probably kept in the best, to be honest, in enclosures and everything. And I think that was through lack of knowledge too. And I think that would be so helpful, which I think is what we're starting to see at places like Animal Con, is just like the best care. And I think that's really cool with places like YouTube, finding you on YouTube, and really giving people that information that's like really helpful and very hard to find too.
Absolutely. But thankfully, that information is becoming much easier to find, and people are holding each other to a higher standard. I don't blame you for the way that you used to keep a leopard gecko. I used to keep turtles absolutely abysmally when I was much younger as well, because that information was not as easy to come by, and you trust the judgment and the directions of the pet store owner or worker, many of whom don't specialize in every single species and they don't know. So instead of seeing glass fish tanks in lots of people's homes with reptiles, I'm now much happier to see enclosures like Zen Habitats, who I'm an ambassador for and who I work with very closely, which have been built mindfully for reptiles to have front opening doors, so you're no longer reaching into the top and triggering their fight or flight response, thinking that you're an eagle coming to grab them, and having three solid sides to the enclosure so they actually feel more enclosed and able to peek out like they're in a burrow instead of being in a fish tank or a goldfish bowl kind of setup where they're constantly on display. They are, for the most part, prey animals and get predated on by something larger. So really thinking about the overall comfortability of each animal and how can I cater to their needs, that's a wonderful shift that we're seeing. And it's great to see that people are making those changes. They're reading more, they're going on YouTube, they're finding channels like mine or people that I'm very close to who also work as digital animal educators and going, hey, that is how I want to keep my animals. That is aspirational to me. Or do it even better. I love it when people follow me and they send me pictures of their enclosures and they make my jaw drop and hit the floor because I'm going, it's almost like the student has become the master.
Right.
Completely run with being the best pet owner possible. You'll have so much fun with it.
That's so cool. And I think that it is cool to be able to, if you're going to be able to keep a pet, to, especially if it's an exotic one, to mimic as best you can their natural habitat, because you want to, if you're going to have that animal, you want to see what it's like for them being in their natural habitat, their natural instincts. I'm sure that's why many people get drawn to different species, is because of those specific instincts and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said that you've done a lot of traveling growing up, and you said you started out working in a pet store when you were 10. How was that like?
Oh, that was a great experience. I knew that I wanted to work with animals ever since I could remember even using my brain. I just didn't know in what capacity, because growing up, if you're into animals, you're told you can be one of three things. You will either be a veterinarian, or a pet shop owner, or a zookeeper. Those are really the three options that people tell you the most, and everyone pushes you for veterinarian because who doesn't want to have an animal doctor in the family? And that's some financial stability there. But spoiler alert, a lot of veterinarians are vastly undercompensated, in my opinion. And they're in a very, very difficult area of work. So for anyone who is in vet med, vet tech, or works as a veterinarian, thank you for your service.
Shout out. Yeah.
That is a really difficult place to be, and we need more veterinarians in the world, and we need them to have more support. But for me, it was a wonderful grounding in getting closer to domestic animals. That was my first job in a pet store, just stacking shelves, getting hands-on with rabbits and guinea pigs and dogs and cats. And right next door, we had a veterinarian. And back in this day, this was in Hong Kong in the late 90s, there was nobody overseeing whether or not I could work or couldn't work, and whether or not I was getting compensated fairly, which, I was basically getting paid in supplies to feed my own animals. But the veterinarian who worked next to this pet store, they allowed me to sit in on surgeries and to remove stitches. And I'm literally
Wow.
10, 11 years old at this point. And that made me realize I love watching the veterinarian do his work, but I really realized that I didn't have the disposition to be an animal doctor. So I wasn't interested in being in a pet shop. It was fine. It paid me my animal supplies, but it didn't excite me. And I realized I love animals, but I'm not a great healer. I'm a bit grossed out by a couple of things, if I'm being completely honest. When it comes to
Yeah, same here.
mango worms I can't deal with. So I just thought, let me find something else. And I had this thought very young. So then I started pivoting. And by the time I was 12, I was working at the local dog rescue, which was the RSPCA. Though by this point, because Hong Kong had gone back to being under Chinese ownership and no longer under the British rule, it was just the SPCA and not the Royal Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Got it.
Just the SPCA. And that was my first introduction to trapping, training, and rehabilitating wild dogs. Many
Wow.
people who would move to Hong Kong, either from Australia, the UK, the USA, would get a dog and they'd do their expat contract. And once it was up, they would not be able to export their dog again because it's extremely expensive to do that from the island. And they would let them go. And these dogs would form small packs and colonies, and they could be a bit problematic here and there. So it was part of my job as a little 12-year-old on the weekends to go and set the traps, bait the traps, capture the dogs, bring them in, assess them, train them, and even place them in homes. So I was interviewing people very young and figuring out what kind of needs they have. In particular, a lot of the people who were coming in as English speakers, some of the other workers at this charity didn't speak much English, so we'd pass them all along to the young English-speaking kid. So I was entrusted with a lot of responsibility there. And then from there, I realized rescue is really tough on the heart. I don't know if I have that in me either. And from there, I went on to being a zookeeper. I have owned my own dog daycare, which was very successful. I was very happy to do that, but again, very taxing in terms of my time and never having time off, because once you are well known as a dog care expert, you will never have a free weekend again in your life. People always want to utilize you so they can have their weekend plans. So that was fun. I learned a lot. and I had a great time being an animal educator on the road. I was taking animals and talking about them in schools, getting people hands-on and close up with these animals, having animal encounters at old people's homes, museums, prisons, sometimes for prisoners who are on good behavior. I'd get brought in with the animals as something of a treat that they could get hands-on with the animals, hold a chinchilla, and it's quite something to see a really hardened criminal sitting there like this as a rock ledge holding a cute little chinchilla just crying because they've never seen
Aw.
something so beautiful. And that's when I thought, this is what I love. I love educating people about animals and inspiring and igniting that passion that they have for them and making people care about the animals that we share this planet with.
Hi, wild ones. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Find Your Wild podcast. This episode is sponsored by my clothing brand, Femme Sauvage, and you can find a discount code and link in the description. So check it out. We have a lot of amazing designs, and $5 of the proceeds goes to different charities. So please feel free to check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think that it's really powerful too to come up with something, and it's kind of good that you knew right away what didn't work for you. I think that that's a pretty big thing to know out of your life too, because when I was younger, I definitely wanted to be a vet, and I also felt emotionally bandwidth. I don't think I'd be able to do that. I don't think I'd be able to have the doctor mindset. And then I did love biology, but I was not good at it. So that didn't fit either. But I think that this day and age is really amazing and cool that you are able to kind of carve your own path, and like you can see how knowledgeable you are with all of these topics. And I think that there is clearly a huge space for people needing to learn, because that is a really big, important aspect of getting people to love and care about animals.
Absolutely. And I think we're living in an age now where you truly can do anything that you want if you put your mind to it, if you really do take the initiative to connect with people who can help you further your ambitions. People are always shocked when I tell them I have no higher education. I have no formal training in terms of a degree or a college diploma or anything of the sort. I left school as quickly as I could because it just wasn't for me. I'm a good learner. I think I have a good brain and a good head on my shoulders, but I can't sit tests. I'm not very good at that. I'm a kinetic learner and I can be up there with the best, but I have to be on my feet. And rather than reading a book, which is nothing wrong with, I love a good book, but I found that the fast track for me into the career of my choice was connecting with people and just doing the dirty work. So starting mucking the stalls, starting out being the person who washes 100 water bowls slobbered on by various dogs in a day, and getting in there and showing the dedication, keeping my mouth very shut and just learning as much as possible. I don't have to reinvent the wheel everywhere. I'll just take what I can learn and prove that I am really dedicated to myself, not to everybody else, but to myself, and figuring out, how does this feel in my soul? Is this a good fit for me? Yes or no? What did I learn from this experience? What did I like? What did I not like? And a lot of people were astounded when I left being a zookeeper at a very, very good zoo. Normally you have to go through years of university training and then rotations at various zoos in various departments. And I walked straight into a job just because I had the guts to turn up and interview and tell them I am the best person for the job. And I got it, and I was a great zookeeper. But I learned very quickly that what I hated about being a zookeeper was the fact that I can pour my heart and soul into every one of these incredible animals, and none of it makes a blind bit of difference if I am not the owner of that animal, because I can only do as much as management allows. And unfortunately, there was so much bureaucracy, so much red tape, so much mismanagement of the funds that should have been allocated to fresh foods, but instead we're going to pivot it over to more plants for the gardening exhibit. and I didn't have a say at all. So that was very frustrating. And I told myself I will never again work for a corporation where I'm not in control of the level of care an animal gets. And it's all these little things that you learn along the way. I mean, people only see the successes. They see that I've written a best-selling book. They see that I've achieved X amount of followers, or that I've done anything that they really enjoy, like the sellout necklace I made for honeybee conservation a few years ago. That's all great. That looks wonderful. But you should see the list of failures and the list of experiences it took to get to these successes. And I think building a life you can be proud of, that you enjoy, where you wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to have an amazing day and I love what I do and I'm going to make a difference, that is success. And that's what I've been working towards. It's never about the followers or any kind of prestige. It's just about living a life where I can go, I am happy in this. And thankfully I am now. I still have goals I want to achieve. Of course, we're always looking for the next thing, just as life is constantly in motion and changing, and as well it should. But that not being afraid to try something, not being afraid to walk away as well, is super powerful. And that has been a huge key in me finding my success. And by success, I define that as being very happy in the work that I do.
Wow, that was so beautiful, really, and I think that it just goes to show that when you're really happy and in your place of happiness and you're finding yourself, and I think that that is a really big part of finding yourself that you mentioned, is having all these failures. Like, even with starting like my clothing brand and starting this podcast, I also think it's a great thing to point out is like the more you have like failures but you keep going, the less it's going to hurt. At least for me, it like hurts less depending on what it is, because you're just like, you know what, this is more important, this end goal of what this piece is to fill into my soul. And the more that you're aligned with your soul work and what's right for you, the less you're going to let other little things bother you. And that's kind of how we heal everything too, is, what is it that interests you? It could be something completely different, but like the fact that you found your space and clearly it really works, and people really connect with learning and educating in a different way. And especially like on YouTube too, is, I mean, my husband and I will always be like gravitating towards YouTube because it is nice to pick a specific topic and be able to watch that, or be like, oh, like that's an interesting topic, and you don't have to worry about like, oh, is this going to get to it? It's like nice points that YouTube helps you learn along the way too, which is a nice blend of all of those paths.
Absolutely. I like to say your authentic vibe will attract your authentic tribe. And
Yes.
for me, my niche was really making animal education accessible, because I don't have any formal diploma. I can't address a room full of scientists and impress them at all. But I can break things down in a way that's easily digestible for the everyday person who loves animals. And instead of talking about the vast differences between what makes an animal poisonous or venomous, I can essentially just say, if you bite it and you die, it's poisonous. If it bites you and you die, it's venomous. Like, that's how we break it down, and people love that.
Yes. Yes. I also just like, I think it's important to make animal care also more accessible, because that's going to make everything better for the animals too. So it's really nice that it's becoming such a big niche, because it's nice that people want to take care of their animals in the best way possible. And I think it really is reflected. Like, I definitely feel like I see that out there, especially with like when I'm like looking at your videos and your habitats in the background, they're so peaceful looking and beautiful. Like, do you ever feel like, well, now you say you keep them at work, which I also feel like is probably nice for you during the day. You get a little break and you're like able to like kind of like, okay, I'm able to shift mindset and gears and kind of connect with my reptiles here. And I guess that's the nice part about that pet, is they're not like a dog, so you can have that schedule of leaving them there too.
Yes, that's right. So anything that really craves or requires my attention and affection, like my dog, like ferrets, those do have to be home with me. However, a reptile, in my opinion, yes, they can recognize an owner. They can enjoy handling, but most of them tolerate it. And most of them don't want to be fished out every single day and interacted with. Most of them just want a meal and then they want to digest in peace in the dark in a nice, humid, warm environment for the next week. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't demand that my animals love me back. I love every single one of my animals for their individual personalities, and whether they are my snake Lucifer, who is right in front of me, who has the worst attitude, will absolutely bite at every opportunity, or my very sweet loving dog who's under the table, I love them equally.
Yeah. And also I feel like you love them for who they are, no matter what they are, and you're not trying to bend them to your will, you know?
Yes,
Like
I think we have, I'm so sorry to cut you off
oh
there.
no.
I think mankind in general has this obsession with dominating and taming. And my thought is, why? Why? What do I get from squashing the will out of a reptile? It's not like a working partner like a horse where I really need some form of cooperation.
Right.
They don't owe me that. I don't require that to live. They haven't been bred for that. So absolutely not. Yeah, so I have no ego when it comes to my animals. If they absolutely hate my guts, that's fine. If they want to love on me, that is fine, and I'll take it when I get it. But I think we have a really ridiculous obsession with every animal must be tamed, every animal must be well behaved. No, no. People love animals, it seems, until they start behaving like animals. You have to respect them for the species and realizing that every animal is an individual. And that is the gamble that you take when you bring home an animal, is you will not always be able to bend them to your will.
Yeah, I think that's a really key factor in respecting animals, working with animals. If you're going to own an animal, I think that you should have that mindset. I know unfortunately not everybody has that mindset. What would you say for like some of those videos of like people owning like like really exotic pets like lions, tigers, and clear like this is obviously not people that have sanctuaries or like take care of them, but for people that kind of, I think there was a video I saw that my friend sent me of a lion cub in the back of a car in Vegas. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I have some pretty grim and unfortunately real experience and knowledge in why that is. And what I will say, first of all, is I am and will always be pro well-kept pets. And I think it's not for me to say that a dog is a better or worse pet than a chameleon, or that a chameleon is better or worse than a lion. Quite frankly, I know some brilliant, phenomenal private big cat keepers who give their animals far more than someone who has a dog that is severely neglected. It depends on the individual. However, one grim piece of knowledge is that in the United States, there are more lions and tigers than there are in the wild. And a lot of it is because of animals being huge attractions for roadside zoos. I do believe zoos are a wonderful thing when they are regulated and they are, non-profit, doing really good work and actually helping to educate people. But there are also, sort of like how there are backyard breeders, there are also backyard zoos who are just in it for profit. And once an animal is no longer small and no longer bringing in a crowd and no longer safe to be handled for photo opportunities, they're no longer profitable. And most of them end up in situations such as being sold on to other backyard zoos or canned hunting situations, which are much bigger than people realize here in the United States, where people will pay to go on a private ranch and shoot these big cats because they're no longer profitable. And quite frankly, there are too many big cats in captivity. The gene pool is already very convoluted. So unfortunately, I don't think that most zoos should be breeding big cats in particular. There are lots of species that we could focus on that are also very much endangered and could do with a boost in their numbers, most of which don't draw a crowd, and who wants to come and see a rare amphibian when you can come and see a lion cub? So it really is very much, to me, a case of, can the animal's needs be met and surpassed? And if so, if it's done legally, then I have no issue. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people are ill-equipped to keep one of those larger exotic animals, which can cause more damage than being bitten by a guinea pig.
Right. That's a really great point, because there has to be a balance, right? If someone is doing the best that they possibly can, and instead of that animal being euthanized and they're living their best life, and the people behind their care are really focused on making sure that their care is close to what they would get into the wild, or the best possible care and captivity that they could get, I think that there's a huge difference, obviously, between that and then, like you said, these backyard keepers, which I think definitely convolutes, and gives a bad name to people that are doing the right thing. But I feel like it's like important to mention that, because not everything is a great pet either. And to really focus on what responsibility wise you can actually take care of. And like, for the love of that animal, you should want that for them too.
I completely agree, and everybody's situation is different. I've been very public in the fact that I will never keep a rabbit ever again. Their care is far more than I could ever be able to give in a day now. And in terms of the space they require, the companionship, the ongoing care for their teeth and their feet, that's just way too much. The fees incurred when you add up the fresh produce that they eat. Same with guinea pigs. For me, it's far less taxing and more enjoyable to keep a corn snake than it is for me to keep a rabbit. But on the surface, someone might look at a rabbit and think that it's much easier. I would say actually feeding one animal once a week and having lights on timers and a misting system on a timer is far easier. It's better for my lifestyle. It's more interesting to me. And even if I had more time, I still wouldn't want to keep a rabbit or a guinea pig. As much as I love and respect them as an animal, they frankly don't do it for me as a pet. They just don't.
Yeah.
I would rather keep a ferret if I'm gonna have a small furry in the house. So it really is down to the individual keeper.
Yeah, and that's very responsible of you. And also, like you said, people have different seasons and phases of their life. Like for me, I had rabbits growing up. I don't think I would have them again right now, but just the idea of like, I'm home more, so I probably would have the capacity right now to hold an animal or like take care of an animal that I needed to be home more. I would be able to have that capacity. But maybe in a couple years from now, my son's older, we might want to travel more. That might not be as realistic too. So different times and seasons might be, and the longevity of the animal, like, all take into play into what you should look at when you want to get a pet.
Absolutely. And that doesn't just extend to exotics. We can look at dogs. I love dogs. Oh my goodness. Dogs have
Me
been my life
too.
for a really long time. I'm such a dog person. I'm so glad to hear that you are as well. But when I was planning on a dog, at the time, I was a stepmother of 3 children of a various age. So bringing home an Akita Inu, which at the time was what I really wanted, was simply not feasible, because you have to have a certain level of awareness of body language when it comes to a guardian breed, in particular one that is an ancient breed, where their body language is not quite as obvious to a child as, say, a Labrador. The slight lip curl or a twitch of an ear goes very missed under all that fur in a way that on a Labrador it might not. So I pivoted and I chose the breed of dog that was right for my circumstance as well as where I could see my future going. I mean, my goodness, I love Malinois. Belgian Malinois are
Mhm.
phenomenal dogs, but they would run rings around me and I would make the worst Malinois owner ever, even though I'm a very capable dog trainer as well. But right now, I can't give them what they would need. So,
Right.
very, very frankly, choose a pet for the life that you have now and where you see it going, not the dream pet that you want in the future if everything were to fall into place. We have to also be realistic.
Yeah, like that's why I have a Newfoundland because she's 3. Her name's Claire, and they call her Dainty Noof at the vet because she's
Oh,
100 pounds even.
oh,
Uh,
sweet.
I'll send you a picture afterwards, but we got her because she can walk when she wants to, and for the most part, she doesn't. She just is very happy laying around. She's not a high energy dog. She can go for a walk. She likes going for walks, but she's just. And then I have a mini Australian Shepherd, but he's 13. So at the time of my life when he was high energy, I was running. I was very active, and now he's not as active, and neither am I. So we're in very similar spirits now.
Perfect. And that's just a
Yeah.
great example of choosing a pet that is right for where you are as well as going forward instead of not doing your research and choosing a dog based on aesthetic. I mean, how many people buy a Siberian Husky or rescue a Siberian
Yeah.
Husky because they think they're beautiful, they look like a wolf, which I know is very much an animal that's near and dear to your heart.
Yes.
But then they realize actually this is like a toddler that will bully me and speak back to me and does not want to listen and has selective hearing. And sometimes
Yes.
that's not great. And they shed everywhere. I would know because I used to live with a whole bunch of huskies. They were not mine, they belonged to an ex-partner of mine. But that's why people go wrong because they stop looking at dogs as individuals and they forget that even within one species, such as dogs, Canis familiaris, you get variation. And same with snakes. Corn snakes are very different in behavior to an Amazon tree boa, which is very different in behavior to a more fossorial species like Calabar python, for example. So you doing research is absolutely vital.
Yeah, their environments are all different where they come from. It's super important. And if you want to, like, I feel like it's very cool. Like, a lot of these places, exotic places or sanctuaries, really need help and volunteers. That can be a great way to connect or be close to wildlife without having that full care and responsibility, and you're doing things in the right way as well.
That's a great idea, and even fostering as well.
Mhm.
If people are considering a cat or a dog, there are plenty of places that are at capacity. Shelters really need a lot of help because of so many people having unplanned and just ridiculous amounts of litters. And it would be great for people if they are not sure if they really are able to give a cat or a dog a home or commit fully, at least to try fostering because you're doing some good, you get that companionship, you can see how it fits with your lifestyle. And if you end up being a foster failure and keeping the animal, that's fine too, but at least you've sort of,
Yeah.
tried before committing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you have that space to be like, okay, actually, I can do this. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important. I get a lot of people DMing me about ferrets in particular because they are the best of a kitten and a puppy rolled into one fur slinky. But there's just one catch because to me they're perfect. They sleep around 18 hours a day. You can feed them a commercial diet or raw or a mix of it. And when you're ready to play, they are always ready to play. It doesn't matter how old they get, they are ready for a good time and their
Aw.
antics are phenomenal. But the one catch is they do have an odor. And It is strong. So that is why they get rehomed so frequently, because that is not a fun smell if you don't like it. It smells very musty and musky. It's the kind of smell, because it's an oil. It's an oil that they secrete. If you touch a ferret, you will smell like that. If you touch your clothes will smell like that. A lot of people don't like that. And
Right.
their droppings are also really stinky as well, because they're an obligate carnivore. They're supposed to eat meat. And with the introduction of grains and cheap fillers in commercial diets, it makes their poop smell horrible. So when people DM me and say, I'm so excited, I'm gonna go and see ferrets for the first time, I tell them, don't see the ferret, smell the ferret. Pick up that weasel,
Right.
take a big, long whiff, because you're going to be smelling a whole lot of that. And if you live with other people, they're also going to be subjected to that. I personally love it now. It's a very comforting smell to me because I've been around them for so long. But if you plan to have visitors and they have very sensitive noses, or a partner with a sensitive nose, there's no getting around that. You can do as much bedding changing as you want, the best diet as possible, and you will go nose blind to it eventually. Nobody else will. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yep. And the honesty too of like, that's what it takes if you want that animal, and if you can mentally, like, okay, if you can align with that, and like if you're okay with that and that doesn't bother you, like it doesn't, you don't care, and that's what makes it a good pet for you, and maybe it wouldn't be a good pet for somebody else. I also wanted to say, I know you lost some of your ferrets recently, so I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for your losses. I know that it's never easy losing a pet.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Dobby and Niffler, as they were called.
Rest in peace, buddies.
They're the best. They were 7 and 8, which is a fair age for ferrets. Unfortunately, in the United States, there is one company that has a monopoly on the production of ferrets in the United States, and as such, they are heavily inbred, and they don't have the expected lifespans as you see in other countries. For example, in the UK, I used to work with hunting ferrets, and they're all independently bred by people who choose to breed ferrets for working lines or pet lines, but they're not inbred over and over and over, as we see here, unfortunately, in the US. So that is another reality with ferrets, is they are riddled with disease, especially in the United States. But at the very least, Dobby and Niffler were able to inspire millions of people to take an interest in them, to consider their care and their needs, and who enjoyed their antics and made people see them as actual awesome little predators and weasels rather than a stinky rodent, which they are stinky, but they're not a rodent. So it really helped they helped to change a lot of people's minds.
That's so beautiful. Well, rest in peace, and thank you so much for sharing them with the world and inspiring other people, and looking out for their well-being and their true sense of self, and showing their true sense of self, and the vastness of what that is for each animal and each species. I know you have a hard stop, so I just want to respect that, and just to let people know where they can find you and your information that you share so awesomely with everybody.
Thank you so much. So yes, unfortunately, I do have to go to another prior engagement, but thank you so much for having me. And if anybody is inclined to come and check out what I do and see some of my amazing animals, you can do that on YouTube by looking up Emzotic, which is EMZOTIC. Or you can look me up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which is now X, and all the other good platforms on emoticofficial.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Em, for your time. And I really loved our conversation and getting to know you better. It was awesome. And hopefully I'll see you at the next Animal Con.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye. And bye, wild ones. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks for being here.
And the mountains so high and so deep, I feel in my bones. In the call of the wilds, always breathe.